Stop it! Just, just leave my dress alone.
Stop it. Just leave my dress alone. Elena's terrified whisper echoed in the empty hall. It was her first week as a teaching assistant at the prestigious college, and Tyler, the rich, untouchable bully, had her cornered. He thought his father's money gave him the right to harass her, to ruin her career just for fun, and that her quiet nature meant she was an easy target. But he made one fatal mistake. He had no idea that the shy woman he was tormenting was about to use her hidden strength to turn the tables so completely. He would end up on his knees, begging her for mercy. The air at Westfield College felt different, heavier with the scent of old money and new entitlement. For Elena Rodriguez, it was like stepping onto another planet. She had spent her life in a small working-class town where success was measured in calloused hands and honest labor. Here, success seemed to be something you were born with. At 23, holding her position as a new teaching assistant for the popular Psychology 101 course, she felt like an imposter. Her sensible flats clicked quietly on the polished stone walkways, a stark contrast to the confident strides of students wearing designer labels she could only recognize from magazines. She clutched the worn leather strap of her satchel, a high school graduation gift from her parents. It was her one link to home, a reminder of the people who believed in her, who sacrificed so she could be here. She took a deep, shaky breath and pushed open the heavy oak door of the lecture hall. The room was grand, with tiered seating and a state-of-the-art projection system. It was already half full, the air buzzing with conversations about weekend yacht parties and European ski trips. In the back row, a clique of young men immediately stopped talking and turned their heads as one. Their leader was Tyler Hampton, a student whose handsome face was plastered on the school's website for winning a business competition. He was charismatic, athletic, and radiated an unshakable confidence that came from never being told no. He leaned over to his friend Jake and said just loud enough to carry, Well, looks like Psych 101 just got a lot more interesting. I was expecting someone old and boring." His friends Brad and Connor snickered like hyenas, their eyes scanning Elena from head to toe. Elena's cheeks burned with a heat that spread down her neck, but she forced her feet to carry her to the front. She placed her satchel on the lectern and turned to face the class, her heart thumping a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice sounding small in the vast room. "I'm Ms. Rodriguez, and I'll be your teaching assistant for this course." Before she could even introduce the syllabus, Tyler's hand shot up, but he didn't wait for her to call on him. "Ms. Rodriguez?" he asked, drawing out her name with a mocking tone. "You look like you should be sitting with us, not teaching us. Are you even old enough to buy a drink, let alone teach a college class?" The question was a clear challenge, a sexist jab meant to undermine her authority in front of everyone. His friends erupted in loud, braying laughter. Elena felt the eyes of every student in the room settle on her. She saw pity in some, amusement in others, but most just looked uncomfortable, quickly averting their gaze to their notebooks, unwilling to get caught in Tyler's crosshairs. He was the son of a powerful college board member, a fact that gave him a kind of diplomatic immunity on campus. "I can assure you all that I am more than qualified to be here," Elena said, her voice tight and professional, though inside she was screaming. She turned to the pristine whiteboard, needing to put her back to them for just a moment to compose herself. She uncapped a black marker, but her hand was shaking so badly that the first line she drew was wobbly. As she began to write down the key topics for the semester, social influence, cognitive biases, behavioral psychology, she heard Tyler's stage whisper cut through the room again. "Look at that dress. She's trying so hard to look like a serious teacher. But you can't hide a body like that." Each whispered word felt like a physical poke, a violation that made her skin crawl. That night, she sat on the edge of her bed in her small off-campus apartment, talking to her roommate Sarah. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, the fight draining out of her. "They look at me and they don't see a teacher. They see something to laugh at, to pick apart. I feel so small." The initial disrespect wasn't a one-time event. It became the new normal. Tyler treated Elena's class like his personal lounge. He and his friends would consistently arrive 10 minutes late, letting the heavy lecture hall door slam shut behind them, disrupting whatever Elena was saying. He would then slouch in his chair, kick his expensive sneakers up on the desk in front of him, and scroll through his phone. One afternoon, while Elena was explaining the Stanford prison experiment, Tyler took a loud phone call. "Yeah, Dad," he said, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. "The Aspen trip is a go. Just make sure the private jet is ready for Friday." He was performing, making sure everyone, especially Elena, understood his status and how little this class meant to him. His campaign of harassment soon moved beyond the classroom. He seemed to be everywhere she went. If she was in the library, he would suddenly appear in the same aisle, leaning against a bookshelf and staring at her. If she was getting coffee, he would cut in line to stand beside her, his presence a constant, looming threat. He started showing up at her office during her designated student hours, not to discuss psychology, but to pry into her personal life. He'd lean against the doorframe blocking the entrance and ask, "So a pretty girl like you must have a boyfriend, right? Or are you just lonely here, all by yourself?" Feeling a growing sense of dread, Elena knew she couldn't handle this alone. She requested a meeting with her department head, Professor Williams, a man who had been at Westfield for over 30 years, and whose office smelled of old books and complacency. She carefully detailed Tyler's behavior, the constant disruptions, the inappropriate personal questions, the way he followed her. Professor Williams listened with a patient but distant expression. When she finished, he leaned back in his creaky leather chair and steepled his fingers. "Elena," he said with a patronizing sigh, "you're new here. You have to understand Tyler Hampton is a bit of a character. The Hamptons are one of this college's most important benefactors. They funded the new science wing." He gave her a thin smile. "Frankly, boys will be boys. He probably has a little crush on you. You just need to develop a thicker skin. Don't rock the boat." The dismissal was more painful than the harassment itself. It told her she was completely on her own. To make matters worse, Professor Williams must have said something, because the next day, Tyler's smugness had curdled into something cold and vindictive. He knew she had reported him, and he was going to make her pay. He started a rumor campaign, telling people she was uptight and desperate for attention, twisting her professional boundaries into personal flaws. Elena's already fragile confidence began to shatter. Her lectures became hesitant, her voice quiet and unsure. She felt like she was failing not just as a teacher but as a person. During one particularly difficult lecture where Tyler had corrected her on a minor point with sneering condescension, a female student named Maya Chan lingered behind. She waited until the room was empty. "I see what he's doing," Maya said, her voice full of a quiet strength. "It's not you. It's him. It's not right." Just that small acknowledgement, that simple validation felt like a lifeline. But the moment of relief was short-lived. As Elena walked down the empty hallway later, Tyler cornered her near a stairwell. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path entirely. His body was so close she could feel the warmth radiating from him, trapping her against the cold wall. "I like your sweater," he said, his eyes slowly, deliberately traveling down her body and back up to her face. "But I bet you look even better without it." He held her gaze for a long, terrifying moment, a cruel smile playing on his lips, before he finally stepped aside and let her pass, leaving her trembling in his wake. It's so awful to feel trapped like that, and we know many people have felt that way in one situation or another. We're curious, where are you all watching from today? And has anything like this, with someone making those kinds of comments at work, ever happened to you? Let us know your story down below. A few days later, just as Elena was beginning to think things couldn't get any worse, Tyler approached her with a shocking change in demeanor. He waited for her after class, his usual swagger gone, replaced by a look of earnest humility. "Ms. Rodriguez," he began, his voice soft and serious, "I need to talk to you. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and my behavior has been completely out of line. The things I've said, the way I've acted, it was immature and disrespectful. I am truly sorry." Elena was stunned into silence. This was the last thing she expected. He seemed so genuine, even making eye contact with a look of what appeared to be real remorse. "To prove I'm serious, I'd like to apologize properly. he continued, pressing his advantage. Let me take you to dinner. Somewhere nice off campus. So we can clear the air and I can show you that I'm committed to making amends. Every alarm bell in Elena's head was screaming. Her instincts, honed by weeks of his torment, told her it was a lie. But another part of her, the hopeful, optimistic part that had gotten her this far in life, wanted desperately to believe him. Maybe Professor Williams was right. Maybe he was just an immature kid who had finally realized his mistake. She mentioned the dinner invitation to Maya, who immediately saw through it. Elena, no. Don't go, Maya pleaded. He's a snake. This has to be a trap. But Elena, caught between her fear and her desire for peace, shook her head. I have to give him a second chance, she argued, trying to convince herself as much as Maya. That's what psychology teaches, right? People have the capacity to change. If I don't give him the opportunity, how can I ever expect things to get better? Tyler had told her they were going to a popular, brightly lit Italian restaurant downtown. But when he picked her up in his gleaming black sports car, he turned in the opposite direction, heading up a winding road into the hills. He pulled up to an exclusive high-end steakhouse she'd never heard of. It was isolated and dimly lit, with dark wood paneling and hushed tones. I thought this would be more private, he explained with a disarming smile. A place where we can have a real, honest conversation. For the first hour, the ruse was perfect. He was charming, attentive, and appeared deeply remorseful. He asked about her graduate research and listened with feigned interest. He spoke of the immense pressure from his father and his struggle to live up to the Hampton name. It was a masterful performance. He ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. A toast, he said, raising his glass, to a new understanding between us. But as the evening wore on and he refilled her glass again and again, the conversation began to take a subtle, insidious turn. The questions became more personal. Have you dated much since you moved here? What does a girl like you do on a Saturday night? The remorseful student was fading, and the entitled predator was re-emerging. Elena's stomach tightened. The cold dread returned. She had been naive, a fool to believe him. The final mask dropped when he leaned forward, his voice a low purr. My apartment is just up the road. It has an incredible view of the city. We should go there, open another bottle of wine, and continue this conversation. No, Elena said, her voice firm as she placed her napkin on the table and stood up. Thank you for the dinner, Tyler, but I'm leaving now. As she turned to walk away, his charm vanished in an instant, replaced by a flash of rage. He shot up from his chair and his hand clamped around her wrist like a steel trap. His grip was shockingly strong, and his eyes were cold and hard. You're not going anywhere, he snarled, his voice a venomous whisper. You owe me. The restaurant, which had felt intimate and exclusive just moments before, now felt like a cage. Tyler's grip on her wrist was painfully tight, his fingers digging into her skin. I went to all this trouble for you, he hissed, his face inches from hers. His breath smelled of expensive wine and malice. I bought you this nice dinner. I pretended to care about your boring life. The least you can do is show a little gratitude. He was no longer trying to charm her. He was trying to dominate her. He used his larger frame to block her path, forcing her back a step. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? He sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Ms. Rodriguez, the little scholarship girl, waltzing into our world and acting all high and mighty. People like you should be grateful for attention from people like me. I am a Hampton. I get what I want. In that terrifying moment, Elena saw his worldview laid bare. It wasn't about attraction or a misunderstanding. It was about power. She was an object, a prize he felt he was owed because of his name and his wealth. When she tried to wrench her arm free, he became more aggressive, attempting to shove her back toward the secluded corner booth, to pin her against the wall. But then something inside Elena shifted. The panic that had been clouding her mind evaporated, replaced by a wave of cold, crystalline clarity. All her years of studying psychology, of learning about personality disorders and manipulation tactics, came rushing to the forefront of her mind. He's a classic narcissist, she thought, her brain working with surprising speed. His ego is his biggest weakness. Physical force is his game, not mine. I have to outthink him. She stopped struggling, her body going still for a fraction of a second. She looked him directly in the eye, her expression unreadable. "You're right, Tyler," she said, her voice eerily calm. The sudden compliance caught him completely off guard. He paused, his grip loosening almost imperceptibly as he tried to process her reaction. That was the only opening she would get. In one swift, practiced motion, she brought her heel down with all her force onto the arch of his expensive, polished shoe. He let out a sharp, surprised yelp of pain and his hand flew open. She didn't hesitate. She ripped her arm away and bolted. She fled through the restaurant, a blur of motion past the startled faces of the few other patrons. She shoved a chair out of her way, the clatter echoing behind her as she burst through the front door and into the cool night air. Her hands, now trembling with a massive surge of adrenaline, fumbled in her purse for her car keys. She could hear the restaurant door swing open again. "You'll regret this, Elena." Tyler's voice, full of rage, echoed across the empty parking lot. "I'll have you fired. I'll ruin your reputation. I'll tell everyone you came on to me." She finally got the key in the lock, jumped into the driver's seat, and slammed the door. The engine roared to life as she sped out of the parking lot, his vicious threat still chasing her down the dark, winding road. She drove for what felt like hours, tears of fear, humiliation, and finally pure, unadulterated rage streaming down her face. And in that rage, a new resolve was forged. He wasn't going to win. He wasn't going to do this to anyone else. Ever again. If you believe Elena is going to make him pay for what he did, make sure you're subscribed to our channel to see what happens next. You will not want to miss it. The next morning, Elena bypassed her office and the lecture hall entirely. Fueled by a night of sleepless determination, she walked with a steady purpose into the campus security building. The air inside was sterile and quiet. She asked to file a formal complaint, and after a short wait, she was shown into the office of Detective Sarah Murphy. Detective Murphy was a woman in her 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything and a no-nonsense demeanor that Elena found instantly reassuring. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt like she was in the presence of someone who would take her seriously. Elena sat down and recounted everything, starting from the very first day of class. She left out no detail. The public humiliation, the constant stalking, the condescending dismissal from Professor Williams, and the terrifying events at the restaurant. Detective Murphy listened intently, her pen scratching across a legal pad, her expression growing more grim with each new detail. When Elena finally finished, her voice hoarse, Murphy looked up from her notes. "Ms. Rodriguez." "Elena," she said, her tone softening with empathy. "I need you to know that I believe you. And you're not the first person to have a problem with Tyler Hampton." Murphy revealed that there was an unofficial, whispered file on him. "We had a librarian complain that he kept cornering her in the quiet sections of the stacks. A first-year student said he sent her dozens of unwanted texts after she turned him down for a date. In every case, a call was made from his father's office, and the families were persuaded to let the matter drop. They were told it was a misunderstanding. But this was different. An assault attempt is a crime," Murphy stated, her voice firm. "A formal written complaint is something they cannot just sweep under the rug, no matter how much money his father has donated." This revelation, that she was one of many, lit a fire in Elena. Her fight was no longer just her own. Detective Murphy laid out a plan. To make the case airtight, they needed more than her word against the son of a powerful man. They needed irrefutable proof. She asked Elena if she would be willing to wear a small, discreet recording device. Elena agreed without hesitation. Later that day, she met with Maya and told her everything, including the plan with Detective Murphy. Maya was horrified by the details of the dinner but galvanized into action. "He has done things like this for years," Maya said, her jaw tight with anger. "Everyone's just too scared to speak up." Maya sent out a few quiet texts. That evening, a small group of 6 young women gathered in Maya's dorm room. One by one they shared their own stories, A quiet sophomore described how Tyler had trapped her in the laundry room, making lewd comments until someone else walked in. Another recounted how he had publicly shamed her for her thrift store clothes. Their stories were all different, but the pattern was the same. He targeted women he perceived as vulnerable or beneath him. As Elena listened, she felt a powerful bond form with these women. Her fear was completely gone, replaced by a shared sense of purpose. The next day, she walked back into Detective Murphy's office, her shoulders squared and her hands perfectly steady as she signed the official police complaint. The shy, overwhelmed teaching assistant was a distant memory. In her place stood a warrior. Tyler was consumed by a rage he hadn't felt in years. In his mind, Elena hadn't just rejected him, she had humiliated him. He couldn't believe she had the audacity to even show up on campus after their disastrous dinner. He assumed his threats had terrified her into silence and that she would soon resign quietly. To reassert his dominance, he decided he would confront her, to put her back in her place once and for all. He found her after her last lecture, packing her satchel at the lectern, just as he knew she would be. The room was mostly empty, save for a few students lingering in the back. Perfect. He sauntered down the tiered aisle, his footsteps echoing, a cruel, confident smirk plastered on his face. "I thought I made myself clear," he began, his voice a low, threatening growl as he stopped in front of her. "I told you what would happen if you crossed me. I hope you've enjoyed your very short career here, because I promise you it's over." But the reaction he expected, the fear, the trembling, the pleading look in her eyes, never came. Instead, Elena slowly looked up from her bag and met his gaze. Her expression was unnervingly calm, her eyes clear and focused. Hidden discreetly on the lapel of her blouse, a tiny device was actively recording every word. At the back of the hall, Maya and two other girls were pretending to study, their cell phones held ready. "Are you threatening my employment, Tyler?" Elena asked, her voice steady and professional. His smirk faltered for a second, confused by her lack of fear. This wasn't the timid girl he had terrorized for weeks. He pressed on, deciding to escalate. "I'm not just threatening it. I'm ending it," he sneered. "And after my father is done with you, no other college in this state will even look at your resume. You should have just been nice to me when you had the chance." He took another aggressive step forward, closing the space between them until he was looming over her. He reached out and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in, the same power play he'd used at the restaurant. "Now you're going to learn your lesson the hard way." This was the moment. Elena's transformation was absolute. The frightened young woman who once shook while writing on a whiteboard was gone forever. She looked down at his hand gripping her arm, then slowly back up at his furious face. "No, Tyler," she said, her voice ringing with a newfound authority that stunned him into silence. "You're the one who is about to learn a lesson." She looked him dead in the eyes, her voice cold and clear for the recording. "Your money can't buy you the right to hurt women. Your influence ends here. That stops today." As the last word left her lips, she gave a subtle nod. On cue, the main doors at the back of the lecture hall flew open. Two uniformed campus security officers strode in, followed closely by Detective Murphy. Tyler's jaw dropped. He snatched his hand back from her arm as if he'd been burned. His face went from rage to confusion to sheer, unadulterated panic in the space of 3 seconds. The few students in the room gasped, their phones instantly coming up to record the unbelievable scene as the officers calmly approached a sputtering, cornered Tyler Hampton and informed him he was being detained. The news of Tyler Hampton being led away in handcuffs by campus security exploded across Westfield. The videos taken by the students in the lecture hall went viral within hours. His carefully constructed image as the untouchable golden boy was shattered. With the threat of his power gone, a floodgate of suppressed anger and pain burst open. Over the next 48 hours, more than a dozen women, from students to campus staff, came forward to file their own formal complaints with Detective Murphy, each one adding another layer to the damning portrait of a serial harasser. His enablers, Jake and Brad, distanced themselves immediately, giving statements to the campus newspaper that they were shocked and appalled by Tyler's behavior. The college, facing a full-blown PR catastrophe, was forced to take swift and decisive action. Tyler's father, enraged, tried to pull his usual strings. He called the college president, screaming and threatening to withdraw millions in planned donations. But this time it was too late. The story had been picked up by local news stations, and the negative publicity was a bigger threat than losing one donor's money. The president, caught between a rock and a hard place, chose the side of self-preservation. Tyler was immediately suspended from all classes and banned from campus pending a formal disciplinary hearing. He was stripped of his academic honors and his role as president of the business club. He was, for the first time in his life, a pariah. The hearing was a somber affair, held in a sterile boardroom that felt more like a courtroom. Elena walked in with her head held high, flanked by Maya and two of the other women who had come forward. She presented her case with calm, unwavering composure, detailing the harassment from start to finish. Then, she played the recording from their final confrontation. The audio was crystal clear. His threats, his aggression, his confession of trying to get her fired. It was undeniable. Then, one by one, the other women stood and gave their own testimonies, their voices shaking but resolute. Tyler sat at a long, polished table alone. His high-powered lawyer couldn't do anything against the mountain of evidence. His father wasn't allowed in the room. As he listened to Elena's testimony, then the recording, then the litany of pain he had caused so many others, his infamous arrogance finally irrevocably cracked. He started by trying to deny it, then to twist the narrative, but the sheer weight of the truth was crushing him. His shoulders slumped. He stared down at his hands, unable to meet the gaze of anyone in the room. He wasn't the king of Westfield anymore. He was just a spoiled, pathetic bully who had finally been held accountable. The board's decision was swift and unanimous. Immediate and permanent expulsion from Westfield College. Expelled and disgraced, Tyler Hampton returned to a home where the silence was deafening. His father's anger and disappointment were palpable. Stripped of his privilege, his friends, and the identity he had built his entire life around, he hit rock bottom. The court mandated that he attend intensive counseling and a harassment prevention program as part of his plea deal to avoid more serious criminal charges. At first, he was resistant, sullen, and defiant. But week after week of forced introspection, of having a therapist challenge every excuse he made, began to wear down his defenses. He had a breakthrough when he was forced to confront the fact that his father's dismissive, boys will be boys attitude had been the soil in which his own toxic behavior had grown. For the first time, he began to see his actions not as mistakes, but as choices he had made, choices that caused real harm. Back at Westfield, Elena was thriving. She taught her psychology classes with a passion and confidence that resonated deeply with her students. She was no longer just a teaching assistant, she was a leader. Working with Detective Murphy and a newly motivated administration, she helped spearhead a complete overhaul of the campus harassment policy, creating clearer reporting channels and a zero-tolerance culture. Her classroom became a sanctuary of respect and open discussion. Months later, a thick envelope with no return address arrived at her campus office. Inside was a long handwritten letter. It was from Tyler. It was not a letter of excuses or a plea for forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. It was a raw, honest, and deeply humbling apology. "I'm writing this to take full responsibility," one line read. "I was a bully who hid behind his father's money. I was cruel because it made me feel powerful. The harm I caused you and so many others was real. And I am profoundly sorry for the fear and pain I inflicted." He wrote that he had started volunteering at a center for at-risk youth, using his own story as a cautionary tale to help other young men unlearn the toxic lessons of masculinity he had embodied. His journey was just beginning, but it was a genuine one. The story on campus was no longer just about a bully getting his comeuppance. It was a story of transformation, born from one person's incredible courage. The final, enduring image was twofold. Elena, standing at the front of a packed lecture hall, confidently teaching a lesson on bystander intervention, inspiring her students to be better. And miles away, Tyler, sitting in a circle of teenagers, earnestly leading a discussion on what true respect really means, both of them on different paths, but both growing from the ashes of their shared history, working in their own ways to make the world a place where everyone's dignity is honored. Elena's story shows that one person's courage can change everything. It's a powerful reminder that we all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. If you were inspired by this story of an underdog finding their strength, we have a whole playlist of similar stories we think you'll love. We've linked it for you down in the comments for you to check out next.